Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into a world of lace corsets and the endless rustling of silk. You're about to spend an entire day in a Victorian lady's dressing room, a place where fashion ritual and sheer patience collided in the most fascinatingly mundane way. Imagine waking up not to the hum of an alarm clock, but to the soft flicker of gaslight filtered through heavy curtains. The world outside is still cloaked in mist, and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages echoes faintly in the morning fog. In this world, your day doesn't begin with a quick shower and a cup of coffee. No, your day starts with layers, lots and lots of layers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I always find it amazing how this little moment connects us all, no matter where we are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning light barely trickles in through the thick velvet curtains as you stir beneath layers of quilts and lace-trimmed linens. Outside, the air is crisp, the sort of damp chill that seeps into your bones if you're not bundled up properly. But you are. Victorian nights were nothing if not drafty, and Victorian ladies were nothing if not prepared. You're cocooned in layers of blankets, the kind of heavy quilted monstrosities that practically pin you to the mattress. A soft knock at the door signals the entrance of your lady's maid, a woman whose name you sometimes forget, but whose face you know better than your own. She's carrying a basin of warm water and a linen towel, setting them on the wooden vanity with the sort of practiced silence that only comes from years of serving in grand houses like this one. You stretch beneath the weight of the covers, feeling the slight stiffness of a night spent half restrained by your corset. Yes, even at night the corset remains, albeit looser than during the day. Heaven forbid your waist should expand even a fraction during slumber. The maid helps you sit up, her hands surprisingly firm for their delicate appearance. She begins the morning ritual, washing your face with the warm cloth, dabbing it gently around your eyes, and smoothing away any remnants of sleep. The water is scented with lavender, its soft aroma wafting through the room and mingling with the lingering smell of last night's fire. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the vanity mirror, pale, slightly flushed from the warm cloth and framed by loose tendrils of hair that have escaped the confines of last night's pins. It's not the polished image you present to the world, but it's real, unvarnished. For a brief moment, you allow yourself to linger in that reflection before the ritual continues. The first layer is the chemise, thin white and soft against your skin. It slips over your head with ease, falling to your knees and skimming your body like a whisper of cotton. The maid smooths it over your shoulders, her hands deft and efficient. Next comes the drawers, split down the middle for convenience, though no one dares speak of it. Privacy is paramount, but practicality sometimes wins, even in Victorian fashion. You step into the drawers, the maid tying them neatly at your waist before moving on to the stockings. Woolen and thick, they're rolled up your legs with care gartered just above the knees to keep them in place. The stockings itch slightly, but you know that by midday, you won't even notice. The next layer is the corset cover, a light cotton piece that shields your delicate chemise from the rough embrace of the corset itself. It's ironic you think that there must be a layer to protect you from another layer, but such is the way of Victorian dressing. Each garment has its purpose, its place, its ritual. Finally, it's time for the corset. Your maid holds it up reverently, the stiff boning and tight laces looking more like the structure of a ship than a garment meant for a person. You take a deep breath, grasping the edge of the vanity for support as she fits it around your torso. The laces are drawn slowly at first, then tighter and tighter still until your breath is measured, your waist cinched to society's standards. There's no room for slouching now, no space for indulgence. Your posture is perfect because it has to be. When she's done, the maid steps back to survey her work, her hands folded neatly in front of her apron. You nod just once, and she springs back into action, gathering up the petticoats from the wardrobe with the kind of efficiency that makes you think she's done this 1,000 times before. And she has. The petticoats are thick layered in lace and cotton, adding volume and structure to your form. One after the other, they're slipped over your head and tied at the waist, each one heavier than the last. By the time the final layer is settled, you feel nearly encased, cushioned by fabric, restrained by laces, and prepared for the day ahead. The mirror reflects the image of a Victorian lady, not quite finished, but well on her way. Outside, the sun is creeping higher, stretching long fingers of light across the cobbled streets. You watch it rise, knowing that the dressing room ritual has only just begun. The corset, as you've come to know it, is less a garment and more a fortress. It hugs your torso with a stubborn kind of tenacity, holding everything in place with a grip that's both reassuring and mildly suffocating. Victorian society has a deep, almost reverent relationship with corsets, believing that a woman's virtue is measured in inches, specifically the inches of her waist. The ideal is somewhere around 18 to 20 inches, though only the most dedicated, or perhaps the most stubborn, achieve that elusive number. Your maid tugs at the laces one last time, the breath catching in your chest as the corset cinches tighter. "There we are," she murmurs, smoothing her hands down the fabric to ensure it lies flat against your ribs. The stays are firm, unforgiving, and you have to remind yourself to take shallow breaths, the kind that flutter just beneath your collarbone. Deep breaths are a luxury you can't afford, at least not while laced into this contraption. Historians still argue whether the corset was truly as torturous as modern sensibilities would like to believe. There are tales of fainting, of course, but was it the corset or simply the heat of overcrowded ballrooms and the weight of layers upon layers of clothing? Some suggest that the notion of women collapsing at the mere flick of a fan was exaggerated, a bit of Victorian melodrama meant to heighten the fragility of womanhood. Regardless of the truth, the corset remains a symbol of both elegance and constraint. You glance at yourself in the mirror, noting the way your waist tapers inwards, your hips flaring out in that dramatic bell shape, so coveted by society. It's a silhouette sculpted not by nature, but by fashion. The corset doesn't just mold your body, it molds your behavior. You can't bend at the waist, at least not easily. Sitting requires a kind of practiced grace, lowering yourself down with your back perfectly straight. There's no slouching, no casual lounging about. Every movement is deliberate, calculated, and unmistakably ladylike. As you stand there, Your maid reaches for the next layer, the modesty petticoat. It's a simple piece, plain and white, but necessary. It shields your chemise from the harsher layers of fabric, yet to come protecting its delicate lace and fine stitching. It's tied at the waist with a ribbon cinched just enough to sit comfortably over the corset without adding too much bulk. And now comes the real work, the crinoline, a masterpiece of Victorian engineering. It's a steel-framed cage that bellows out from your hips, creating that iconic dome-like shape. It's lighter than it looks, but cumbersome, especially when maneuvering through doorways or attempting to sit in a chair that isn't designed for its expanse. Victorian ladies were known for their peculiar way of sitting, where one must gather the crinoline and petticoats, sweeping them to the side in one fluid motion before descending gracefully onto a seat. It's an art form, truly, and one that takes years of practice to perfect. Once the crinoline is secured, your maid smooths the fabric over it, fluffing out the layers like she's handling the petals of a particularly temperamental flower. There's an odd kind of comfort in its rigidity. It creates a bubble of space around you, a perimeter of sorts. You are encased, but safe protected by layers of fabric and steel. There's no worry of accidental touches or brushes against inappropriate company. The crinoline serves as both fashion and fortress. The final touch before the day dress is the outer petticoat, heavier than the first, and often trimmed with lace or embroidery. It settles over the crinoline like frosting on a cake, smoothing out the harsh lines of the cage beneath. With each layer, you feel the weight increase, pressing down on your hips and thighs with familiar persistence. It's not uncomfortable exactly, but noticeable, a constant reminder of the expectations that come with your position. And then finally, the day dress is brought out. Your maid drapes it over her arm, the fabric spilling down in waves of silk and satin. It's a deep shade of emerald today, chosen for its richness and the way it brings out the color of your eyes, or so you were told. The bodice is adorned with lace, the sleeves puffed slightly at the shoulders, before tapering elegantly down to your wrists. Tiny buttons line the back, nearly impossible to manage alone, which is why your maid steps forward once more, her fingers deftly fastening each one with the kind of precision that only comes from repetition. You stand perfectly still, arms slightly outstretched, as she works her way up the line of buttons. Each one clicks into place with a soft pop, the fabric pulling tighter around your torso as she goes. The dress settles against the corset, molded perfectly to the contours of your body. There's no room for error, no slack to be found. It fits like a glove, perhaps even tighter. When the last button is fastened, your maid steps back, her hands folded neatly in front of her apron as she surveys her work. You glance at your reflection, noting the way the dress sweeps to the floor, pooling slightly around your feet in a whisper of fabric. The crinoline holds its shape beautifully flaring out, just enough to suggest grandeur without bordering on the absurd. Outside, the morning sun has climbed higher, its rays filtering through the lace curtains in delicate patterns. You turn slightly, the dress moving with you in a cascade of silk, the layers whispering against each other with each step. The corset pinches slightly, but you've grown used to its embrace. It's not just clothing, it's armor. You take one last glance in the mirror before nodding to your maid. The ritual is complete for now, but there is much more to come. The corset is tight, The petticoats are perfectly fluffed, and the day dress drapes over you like a curtain of silk and lace. But the ritual is far from complete. Victorian fashion is not just about the dress, it's about the silhouette, the accessories, and the finishing touches that turn mere clothing into a statement of status and grace. And so you move on to the next step, building the silhouette with petticoats and bustles. Your maid approaches with a stack of petticoats folded neatly over her arm. These are different from the modesty petticoats beneath your dress. These are for volume. They're starched and layered with lace heavier than you would expect, and rustle loudly as they brush against each other. One by one, she lifts them over your head, dropping them into place around your waist. You can feel the weight increasing with each layer pressing down on your hips and spreading out across the crinoline like the petals of a blooming flower. Petticoats are the unsung heroes of Victorian fashion. They add volume, warmth, and structure to the skirts, giving that bell-shaped silhouette that sways with every step. Historians still argue whether this excess of fabric was purely for aesthetics or if it served some practical purpose. Some believe it acted as a barrier against the chill of unheated carriages and drafty ballrooms. Others suggest it was merely a product of vanity, a way to exaggerate the feminine form. Regardless of its true origin, one thing is certain: Victorian ladies never left the house without at least 3 layers of petticoats swaying beneath their skirts. Next comes the bustle, a marvel of Victorian ingenuity. Made of wire padding and sometimes even horsehair, the bustle is tied around your waist and adjusted to sit just above your hips, pushing the back of your dress outward in a dramatic arc. It's meant to exaggerate the curve of your lower back, creating that iconic Victorian silhouette that sweeps grandly behind you. You watch in the mirror as your maid fusses over the straps, making sure it sits perfectly symmetrical, fluffed just right, and tucked in without a wrinkle. You can't help but marvel at the engineering of it all. The bustle is lightweight but strong, flexible but rigid enough to hold its shape for hours on end. It's like wearing a little piece of architecture, one designed to make you look as elegant and statuesque as possible. Victorian women might not have had skyscrapers, but they certainly knew how to build themselves into towering figures of fashion. With the bustle secured, your maid steps back to smooth the fabric of your dress, over it adjusting the folds so they fall perfectly around the frame. You turn slightly from side to side, watching the skirt sway and sweep in the mirror. It's an odd sensation, feeling your dress flare out behind you, almost like you're carrying a phantom limb. Moving through doorways later will require a bit of sideways maneuvering and a graceful lift of fabric, but for now you appreciate the way it completes the look. Of course, the layers aren't just for show. They serve a practical purpose as well, or at least that's what you've been told. Petticoats provide warmth during the long winter months when stone floors and unheated parlors send chills through even the thickest stockings. And the bustle, well, it certainly keeps wandering hands at bay. It's hard to be inappropriate when 3 feet of fabric are billowing between you and anyone who dares step too close. You can't help but smile at the thought, the absurdity of it all. Victorian fashion is a fortress, a defense mechanism disguised as elegance. Layers upon layers of fabric create barriers. Hoops of steel ensure distance, and the stiff structure of the corset guarantees you won't be running off anywhere in a hurry. You are quite literally locked into the role society has chosen for you. But there is comfort in the ritual, a sense of security in the weight of it all. Your maid adjusts the folds one last time before stepping back and nodding in approval. You lift your skirts, just slightly feeling the satisfying heft of the petticoats beneath your fingertips. There's a certain elegance to it, a rustling whisper of fabric, the soft clink of hoop skirts brushing against each other. You feel taller, more regal, and somehow more complete. Very good, Miss Your Maid murmurs, smoothing the final wrinkle from your bodice. She steps back and gestures toward the mirror. I believe we are ready for accessories. You turn to face your reflection, catching sight of the silhouette you've built, layer by layer. It's a process that has taken nearly an hour, yet it feels oddly timeless, like you've been dressing for this moment your entire life. You see the bustle arcing gracefully behind you, the petticoats flaring out in perfect symmetry, and the bodice sculpted to your frame with the precision of a tailor's finest work. It's a masterpiece of fabric and steel, of lace and patience. There's a knock at the door, soft and deliberate. Your maid moves swiftly to answer, revealing the milliner, standing just outside her arms, draped with ribbons, bonnets, and hats of every conceivable size. You catch a glimpse of feather, satin, and lace peeking out from beneath the coverings, and you know the next step in this ritual is about to begin. Outside, the sun has fully risen, casting long beams of light through the curtains. You take a deep breath, or as deep as the corset will allow, and prepare yourself for the next stage of transformation. The morning ritual is not yet complete. The bustle is perfectly fluffed, the petticoats layered with precision, and the corset laced to an almost mathematical degree of tightness. But if you thought the ritual was complete, you would be sorely mistaken. No Victorian ensemble is finished without the pièce de résistance, the day dress. And the selection of this dress is no casual matter. It's a decision laced with social implications, guided by unspoken rules, and weighted by the expectation of modesty and elegance. Your maid approaches the wardrobe with the careful reverence of someone handling fragile relics. She pulls open the heavy wooden doors, and there it is, a row of gowns hung in perfect alignment, each one a testament to the seamstress's art. There are dresses for walking dresses, for visiting dresses for mourning, and dresses for riding. But today, it's a visiting dress that you require for the afternoon, holds the promise of tea and polite conversation. Victorian society, as you well know, is meticulous about dress codes. The wrong choice could send the wrong message, and the right choice can solidify your place among the polite elite. Morning dresses are simple, modest, with high necklines and long sleeves. Afternoon visiting dresses are more ornate, often trimmed with lace and ribbons, with bodices cut just low enough to be fashionable, but not scandalous. Evening gowns are another matter, entirely layers of silk and taffeta daring necklines, and sometimes even a hint of shoulder, provided one's reputation could afford it. Your maid pulls out a gown in a soft shade of lavender, trimmed with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. She drapes it carefully over her arm, running her hand over the fabric to smooth any imperfections. "This one, miss?" she inquires, eyes flicking toward you for approval. You nod. Lavender is appropriate, fashionable, but not ostentatious. It suggests a quiet grace, an understated elegance. She lifts it over your head, careful not to disturb the carefully arranged hair at the nape of your neck. The fabric slides down, cool and weighty, settling over the layers of petticoats and crinoline with a whisper of silk. You feel it mold to your form, accentuating the wasp waist created by the corset and flaring dramatically at the hips. The bodice buttons up the back tiny pearl-like buttons that are impossibly delicate. Your maid's fingers work swiftly buttoning each one with practiced efficiency. The weight of the gown is noticeable, more than you would expect from mere fabric. It's as though each layer is a physical reminder of the expectations laid upon you, the roles you are meant to play. In Victorian society, clothing is more than mere protection from the elements. It's a declaration of status, virtue, and propriety. You catch your reflection in the mirror and take in the silhouette, the nipped waist, the full skirts, the way the fabric catches the light and shimmers with each subtle movement. The bustle behind you arcs gracefully, giving the impression of exaggerated elegance. Historians still debate the true purpose of the bustle. Was it purely aesthetic, a means of exaggerating the feminine form? Or did it serve a more practical purpose, providing a cushion for those long hours spent sitting in wooden chairs during afternoon teas and social calls? The answer, it seems, is lost to time, though the result remains. You look like a living doll, sculpted by corsets and crinolines presented to the world in layers of lace and silk. Your maid steps back, nodding approvingly at her work. "Perfect," she murmurs, and you almost believe her. But there is more to be done. Victorian fashion is not complete without its accoutrements, and so she moves back to the wardrobe, producing a drawer filled with gloves of every shade imaginable: white for summer, ivory for formal events, and darker shades for walking out on brisk autumn days. Today, it's ivory, simple, elegant, and perfectly matched to your dress. She slips them over your hands, smoothing each finger and buttoning the wrist with the sort of efficiency that only comes from years of practice. Gloves, you've learned, are more than just a fashion statement. They are a barrier, a layer of modesty that prevents the skin-to-skin contact society so desperately avoids. The Victorian fear of impropriety extends even to the hands touching another's bare skin. Even in a handshake is considered the height of boldness. Gloves allow for the facade of connection without the scandal of it. Next comes the bonnet. Your maid retrieves it from its resting place, a masterpiece of ribbon and lace with just a touch of embroidery along the brim. Bonnets are not mere hats. They are statements. They frame the face, offering a glimpse of beauty without giving too much away. The brim shields your eyes from prying looks and the sun's harsh light casting your features in soft shadow. It is tied beneath your chin with a satin ribbon cinched just enough to hold it in place without pinching. You glance once more in the mirror, and there she is, the Victorian lady, in all her finery. Gloves, bonnet layers of silk, and lace petticoats, and bustles working in harmony to create that perfectly sculpted silhouette. It's a kind of armor, you realize, built not for war, but for society's gaze. Each layer is a barrier, each piece a symbol, each stitch a testament to the meticulous nature of Victorian life. There's a knock at the door, and your maid glides over to answer it. A footman stands there, bowing slightly as he informs you that the carriage is ready, the visiting hour is near, and the ritual of dressing is complete. For now, you nod, lifting your skirts with practiced ease as you step forward. The petticoats whisper against each other, the crinoline sways with each step, and you feel every inch the Victorian lady, armored in fabric, secured by laces, and adorned with the weight of expectation. The morning ritual may be over, but the day's performance has only just begun. The door closes softly behind you, and you find yourself in the grand hallway skirts, sweeping gracefully along the polished wooden floor. The air is tinged with the faint aroma of lavender and coal smoke, a curious combination of luxury and practicality that defines the Victorian household. Sunlight filters through the high windows, casting long beams across the floorboards, catching the glimmer of dust motes, dancing lazily in the stillness. Your footsteps are muffled by the layers of fabric that trail behind you, a whisper of silk and cotton that marks your passage. Outside, the distant clatter of hooves and the low rumble of carriage wheels remind you that the world is already in motion, and soon you will join it. But first, there is one more ritual to perform the art of accessorizing. Accessories in the Victorian era are not mere embellishments, they are declarations. Every glove, every bonnet, every brooch speaks volumes about who you are, where you come from, and how you wish to be perceived. Social status is woven into the fabric of your attire, displayed proudly in the glimmer of a cameo pin or the modesty of a lace glove. To step outside without the proper accessories would be akin to stepping out half-dressed. Your maid appears behind you, carrying a small polished wooden box. She opens it with a flick of her wrist, revealing its contents with the sort of reverence typically reserved for holy relics. Inside, nestled against satin lining, are the day's chosen adornments: a pair of lace gloves, a cameo brooch, and a delicate fan with mother-of-pearl ribs. The gloves come first, of course. Your maid slips them over your hands, smoothing each finger into place, ensuring there are no wrinkles or creases. Victorian gloves are not designed for warmth, they are designed for modesty. They serve as a barrier, a layer of propriety between you and the world. Touching another person without gloves would be considered scandalous, a breach of etiquette so severe it could ruin reputations. Gloves are as much a social barrier as they are a fashion statement. Next comes the brooch. It's a delicate thing, ivory carved into the shape of a rose, framed by a ring of tiny pearls. Your maid pins it to the high neckline of your dress, just beneath your chin. It catches the light, reflecting tiny points of brightness with every subtle movement. Brooches like this one are more than mere decoration. They are symbols of family wealth and status. Some are heirlooms passed down through generations, while others are gifted on important occasions, engagements, birthdays, even funerals. This one you know belonged to your grandmother, and its weight against your collar is oddly comforting. Finally, the fan. It is as much a tool as it is an accessory, a mechanism for communication and modesty. In the Victorian age, the language of the fan is a delicate art form. A flick of the wrist, a flutter against the cheek, even the way it is held can convey messages without a single word spoken. It is said that with enough practice, one can carry on entire conversations through the graceful flicker of a fan. Today, however, you will likely use it for its more practical purpose, staving off the heat trapped beneath layers of petticoats and lace. You grasp the fan lightly, feeling the smoothness of the mother-of-pearl handle beneath your gloved fingertips. It opens with a satisfying whisper, revealing delicate hand-painted flowers across its lace surface. Your maid nods approvingly, stepping back to admire the final effect. You are at last prepared for the world beyond the dressing room. Outside the window, the carriage awaits its glossy black frame glimmering in the morning light. A footman stands by the door, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed straight ahead. His posture is one of practiced indifference, as though he is entirely unaware of your existence. This, of course, is the mark of a good servant present, but invisible, always anticipating needs without acknowledgement. You lift your skirts, slightly gliding down the grand staircase, with each step calculated and deliberate. The layers of fabric whisper against the polished banister, and you catch glimpses of your reflection in the gilt-framed mirrors that line the walls. Your posture is perfect. How could it not be, with a corset holding you upright, and the bustle behind you sways rhythmically with every step? At the bottom of the staircase, your maid hands you a parasol. It's light with a wooden handle and a lace canopy that matches the trim of your dress. Victorian ladies are rarely seen outdoors without one. Not only does it shield you from the sun's harsh rays, but it also preserves the delicate pallor so prized by society. Tanned skin is the mark of the laborer, the field worker, not of a lady. To be pale is to be wealthy, untouched by the indignities of manual labor. You step out onto the stone path, the morning air crisp and fresh, carrying with it the faint scent of coal fires and damp earth. The footman bows slightly as he opens the carriage door, and you nod in acknowledgement, lifting your skirts just enough to step inside. The seats are plush, upholstered in deep green velvet, and you settle yourself, carefully smoothing your skirts over your lap. The bustle makes it a bit of a challenge, but you have long since mastered the art of sitting gracefully in layers of steel and satin. The door closes with a gentle click, and the carriage lurches forward, wheels crunching over cobblestones as it picks up speed. Outside, the city begins to wake shopkeepers sweeping their steps, milkmen clattering down the lanes with their carts, and clusters of children dashing through puddles with shouts of delight. You watch it all through the lace-trimmed curtain of the carriage window, your gloved hand resting delicately on your lap. The ritual of dressing is complete, but the performance has only just begun. You are not merely dressed, you are adorned, armored in layers of silk lace and Victorian propriety. You are ready to be seen, judged, and admired, and perhaps, just perhaps, that is enough. The carriage rolls gently over the cobbled streets, the steady rhythm of hooves striking stone, lulling you into a kind of soft reverie. Outside, the world is painted in shades of gray and brown brick facades, lined with iron railings, narrow streets crowded with pedestrians in various states of morning bustle. The city is alive with movement, a choreography of industry and elegance, each person moving with a sense of purpose, whether delivering fresh milk or hurrying to an office with a briefcase tucked beneath an arm. You adjust the lace curtain, slightly peering out at the passers-by. Some are dressed in well-tailored suits, others in aprons dusted with flour or soot, their hands marked by labor. You watch as a flower vendor arranges bundles of roses and violets, her hands deft and quick, her hair pinned beneath a faded bonnet. It's an odd feeling being encased in silk and crinoline while life bustles on outside. You're separated by layers of fabric and layers of class gliding through the city, untouched by the grime and noise that hums just outside the carriage window. The journey is not long. Victorian society, after all, is centered around proximity. Visiting hours are reserved for those within a reasonable distance, those whose carriages would not be rattled to pieces by the rough cobbles of the less manicured streets. And today, you are visiting none other than Mrs. Whitlock, a woman whose afternoon teas are spoken of with the sort of reverence usually reserved for royal banquets. Her parlors are the stuff of legend rooms, draped in damask, lit by chandeliers that sparkle even on the dullest of days. It is said she orders her tea directly from China, paying a price that would make even the wealthiest of merchants blush. The carriage comes to a gentle halt, the footman appearing almost instantly to open the door. His gloved hand extends toward you, and you accept it with the practiced grace of a lady who has done this countless times. Your skirts are lifted slightly, just enough to clear the threshold as you step out onto the cobblestones. The air smells faintly of coal and damp stone, the familiar sense of a city awakening to its daily rituals. Mrs. Whitlock's townhouse looms ahead, its facade a testament to Georgian architecture, tall, narrow, with windows that glimmer like glassy eyes. The steps are polished to a sheen, the brass knocker gleaming even in the overcast light. The butler is waiting, of course. He is his expression, as impassive as the stone lions flanking the doorway. He nods respectfully as you approach, pulling open the door with a gesture so smooth it might have been rehearsed. Inside the house is a cacophony of quiet elegance. Thick carpets muffle your footsteps, their patterns intricate and impossibly clean. Chandeliers hang from ceilings so high they seem to float their crystals, shimmering even without the aid of sunlight. The walls are adorned with oil paintings, landscapes, portraits, a scattering of mythological scenes. The scent of lavender and beeswax polish lingers in the air, mingling with the faintest hint of vanilla, likely from the candles burning in the parlor. You are led to the sitting room, a grand space draped in heavy velvet curtains and dotted with low tables set with china teacups and silver spoons. Mrs. Whitlock herself is perched upon a chaise lounge, dressed in a gown of deep burgundy, trimmed with lace at the cuffs and neckline. Her hair is piled high, dusted with just a touch of powder, and her smile is one of practiced delight. "My dear, you look simply radiant," she exclaims, rising gracefully from her seat. Her skirts barely rustle as she moves, likely due to years of perfecting the art of gliding rather than walking. You offer your hand, which she takes in hers, squeezing just lightly enough to convey sincerity without overstepping the boundaries of Victorian propriety. You settle onto the opposite settee, arranging your skirts with practiced elegance, ensuring that not a single layer is out of place. A maid appears, as if summoned by thought alone, bearing a silver tray laden with teacups, a porcelain teapot, and a small dish of sugar cubes. Mrs. Whitlock nods approvingly as the tea is poured, the amber liquid steaming gently as it fills the delicate cups. "Have you heard, Mrs.?" Whitlock leans in conspiratorially, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of new gossip. "Lady Ainsworth's daughter is to be married in the spring, to that dreadful Lord Beckwith. You raise an eyebrow pretending to stir your tea, even though it hardly needs it. Lord Beckwith, you echo your tone, laced with just the right amount of curiosity. Indeed, she whispers, as though the walls themselves might have ears. Can you imagine he's practically penniless? I suppose the estate must be in ruins by now. Such a shame. You nod sympathetically, though the entire arrangement is of little consequence to you. Still, Victorian society is built upon such exchanges, small talk and speculation, whispers of scandal and triumph, whispered over china cups and silver spoons. It's a kind of dance one you've been trained in since you were old enough to sit upright in a corset. Outside the parlor window, rain begins to patter gently against the glass, streaking the view with rivulets of water. The fire crackle in the grate, filling the room with a warmth that contrasts sharply with the damp chill just beyond the walls. You sip your tea, nodding at the appropriate moments, laughing softly when required. It's all part of the performance part of the ritual that defines afternoons like this. The clock chimes somewhere in the distance, its sound muffled by layers of drapery and the thick walls of the townhouse. You find your gaze drifting to the clock on the mantel-carved wood with gilded edges ticking away with the sort of regularity that seems almost hypnotic. Time moves differently in rooms like these, slower, more deliberate, as though the rest of the world is rushing by, while you sit suspended in a moment of genteel leisure. Mrs. Whitlock continues to speak something about a charity ball, or perhaps a new dressmaker from Paris. You nod, listening with half an ear, your gaze still fixed on the rain streaking down the window pane. Outside, the world carries on horses, clattering along cobblestones, servants darting between doorways with parcels, and letters chimney sweeps, scaling rooftops like nimble shadows. But here in this velvet-draped parlor, time holds its breath. The tea is warm in your hands, the fire crackles softly, and for a moment you allow yourself to sink back into the cushions, the layers of silk and lace settling around you like the petals of a flower. You are swathed in comfort, encased in elegance, and bound by the rituals of a world that spins on propriety and appearance. And somehow, for reasons you can't quite explain, it feels safe. The rain continues its gentle tap against the glass, each drop trailing down the pane like slow-moving tears. Outside, the world is a haze of gray and muted cobblestone, softened by the curtain of drizzle. You find it oddly comforting, this small barrier of rain that cocoons you from the noise and bustle of the city. In here, wrapped in layers of silk and lace, you are insulated from the grime and grit of London's streets. Mrs. Whitlock's parlor is warm and fragrant, the scent of lavender and beeswax mingling with the delicate aroma of steeped tea. You sip carefully from the china cup, feeling the warmth spread through your chest, countering the draft that always seems to linger in Victorian homes no matter how grand. The fire crackles softly in the grate, sending flickers of light dancing across the polished floorboards and velvet curtains. The conversation drifts between topics with the practiced ease of those accustomed to idle gossip. Mrs. Whitlock is the sort who always knows the latest news, whether it be the new dressmaker opening shop on Grosvenor Street, or the unfortunate scandal involving the Earl of Rochester and his mysterious absence from last month's ball. You nod and smile at the appropriate moments, inserting murmurs of agreement and surprise when necessary. Victorian society is built on these rituals of politeness and appearance. To break the rhythm would be unthinkable. Have you heard about Lady Farnsworth's new dress? Mrs. Whitlock leans in eyes gleaming with the thrill of a fresh tidbit. They say it was imported directly from Paris, worth nearly £200 if you can believe it. You allow a slight widening of your eyes, just enough to convey astonishment. 200. My goodness, that must be quite the gown. Mrs. Whitlock nods conspiratorially, as though the gown's extravagance were a personal affront. Indeed, I heard it is trimmed with Belgian lace and embroidered with real silver thread. She pauses her expression, turning slightly wistful. I suppose that is the advantage of marrying into money. You nod, though your thoughts are only half present. Victorian fashion is a curious thing, a web of silk and lace, spun around layers of petticoats and strict social expectations. A dress is never just a dress. It's a statement, a symbol, a declaration of one's place in the world. £200 for a gown is enough to feed a family for months, yet here it is spoken of as though it were merely another trinket. Historians still argue whether Victorian fashion was more about status or modesty. The layers upon layers of fabric, the towering hairstyles, the high necklines, all designed to hide the body, to mask it beneath a fortress of cloth. Yet the sheer extravagance of the materials, the intricacy of the designs, suggest it was as much about display as it was about decorum. A kind of modesty worn boldly, if you will. Mrs. Whitlock pours more tea, the porcelain pot clinking softly against the rim of your cup. You watch the steam curl upwards, dissipating into the air before it can reach the heavy velvet curtains. The clock ticks quietly on the mantel, its hands moving at an almost imperceptible pace. Time, it seems, is just as weighed down by layers of tradition as you are. Will you be attending the ball next week? Mrs. Whitlock asks, raising her cup to her lips with practiced grace. You nod. Of course. I wouldn't miss it. Wonderful, she replies, her eyes gleaming with approval. I hear Lord Pembroke will be attending. His estate in Sussex is quite the marvel. They say his gardens are modeled after Versailles. You smile politely, though the name means little to you. Lord Pembroke could be a titan of industry or a disheveled poet for all you know. But in Victorian society, the appearance of knowing is often more important than actual familiarity. Perhaps you might get a chance to see it yourself one day, Mrs. Whitlock adds, with a suggestive raise of her brow. The implication hangs in the air, delicate and unspoken. Marriage courtship, an endless cycle of introductions and expectations, a grand estate, a title, the promise of social standing, all wrapped up in the rustle of silk skirts and the glimmer of chandelier light. A soft chime rings out, its tone melodic and measured. You glance toward the mantel, where the clock ticks away with serene indifference. The hour has slipped by, carried on the soft whispers of gossip and the gentle clinking of teacups. It's time to move on. Visiting hours are strictly regulated. Any longer would be seen as imposing, any shorter would be considered rude. Mrs. Whitlock sets her cup down, her smile unwavering. I suppose I mustn't keep you all afternoon, though I do so enjoy our little chats. She rises gracefully from her seat skirts, barely whispering against the carpet. You follow suit, hands smoothing the folds of your own dress, ensuring that not a single layer is out of place. The maid appears almost instantly, as if conjured by thought, alone her hands folded neatly in front of her apron. She escorts you to the door, and you pause for just a moment, casting one last glance around the parlor. It's a room preserved in amber, untouched by the passage of time. Dust never seems to settle, the curtains are always pristine, and the fire crackles with the reliability of a heartbeat. It is a space frozen in ritual and propriety, just as you are bound in layers of silk and crinoline. Outside, the rain has softened to a drizzle, the cobblestones glimmering with moisture. Your carriage awaits the footman, standing at attention, hand already outstretched to assist you. You lift your skirts, delicately stepping up into the carriage with practiced ease. The door clicks shut, and the world outside is muted once more, reduced to the rhythmic tapping of rain and the distant hum of city life. As the carriage pulls away, you watch the buildings pass by, their facades streaked with rain, their windows glowing softly in the dim afternoon light. The city moves on without pause, unaware of the rituals taking place behind its grand doors. You settle back against the velvet seat, smoothing your skirts and adjusting your gloves. The tea, the talk, the layers of lace, as in decorum, all pieces of a world that is measured not in minutes, but in rituals repeated day after day, year after year. The day is far from over. There are still more layers to don, more rituals to observe. But for now, you ride in silence, cradled in fabric, and tradition, the soft patter of rain, your only companion. The carriage sways gently as it makes its way down the cobbled streets, the rhythmic clatter of hooves a steady pulse against the quiet of the afternoon. Outside, the rain has thinned to a mist, casting the city in a soft haze. London seems muffled, its sharp edges blunted by the dampness that clings to every surface. You lean back against the velvet upholstery, hands folded neatly in your lap, and allow the motion to lull you into a kind of daydream. There's a certain serenity to this moment, the carriage acting as a cocoon, insulating you from the chaos of the world outside. Your layers of fabric, from the petticoats to the bustle press gently against you, a constant reminder of the ritual you've endured just to be seen. Victorian life, you've realized, is not merely lived, it is performed. Every gesture, every glance, every fold of fabric is measured, calculated, and displayed with the precision of a well-rehearsed play. The rain-streaked windows blur the shapes of pedestrians as you pass. Some carry umbrellas ducking beneath the weight of the drizzle, while others scurry from one awning to another, clutching parcels wrapped in brown paper. You catch glimpses of shopkeepers sweeping their stoops, a flower vendor rearranging wilting blooms, and children splashing gleefully through puddles with the kind of reckless abandon you scarcely remember. Your carriage pulls to a stop, the familiar creak of the brakes and the soft whinny of the horses signaling your arrival. The footman appears, almost instantly opening the door and extending his hand. You accept it with the practiced grace of someone who has done this countless times before, lifting your skirts just enough to clear the step as you descend. The street is lined with lampposts, their iron frames gleaming with a sheen of moisture. Gaslights flicker to life, casting long shadows across the damp pavement. You've arrived at Madame Beauchamp's, the most prestigious millinery shop in London, or so you've been told. The shop front is modest, but elegant, with its name etched in gold leaf across the window pane. Bonnets and hats of every size and style are displayed like works of art, each one perched delicately on a wooden stand, trimmed with lace feathers and ribbons of every imaginable hue. You step inside, the tiny bell above the door chiming softly. The air is warm and fragrant, scented with lavender and beeswax, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly pressed fabric. Madame Beauchamp herself is behind the counter, her posture as straight as a fence post, her hair swept back into an immaculate chignon. She wears a dress of deep plum, the sleeves puffed slightly at the shoulders, and her eyes sharp as a bird's light up as she sees you. "Ah, mademoiselle," she exclaims, her accent thick with the rolling syllables of her native France. "I have been expecting you." You offer a polite nod, removing your gloves with deliberate care. In Victorian society, even the act of disrobing one's hands is done with a certain elegance. You place them on the counter, fingertips aligned, and Madame Beauchamp nods approvingly. "Come, come," she beckons, stepping around the counter with the grace of someone half her age. "I've just the thing for you." She leads you to the back of the shop, where shelves are stacked with hat boxes of varying sizes. Ribbons spill from their confines, pooling on the floor like silk serpents. Feathers of every shade bristle from open drawers, and lace hangs in delicate swathes from hooks on the wall. It is a riot of color and texture, an organized chaos that only Madame Beauchamp seems to understand. She reaches for a hat box on the upper shelf, standing on her tiptoes with a deftness that surprises you. With a flourish, she places it on the counter and lifts the lid, revealing its contents as though she were unveiling a masterpiece. And perhaps she is. Inside is a bonnet of deep emerald green, trimmed with lace and adorned with tiny silk flowers that cascade down one side. The ribbons are satin dyed to match the exact shade of the bonnet, and the brim is wide enough to shield your face from both sun and scrutiny. Madame Beauchamp lifts it from its box, with reverence turning it in her hands so the light catches on its surface. "Perfect for you know?" she asks, eyes gleaming with pride. You nod, allowing her to place it gently on your head. She steps back, tilting her head to one side as she assesses her work. "Très jolie," she murmurs, smoothing the ribbons beneath your chin. "Like a duchess, yes." You smile politely, glancing at your reflection in the small oval mirror perched atop the counter. The bonnet frames your face, its wide brim casting soft shadows across your cheeks. You turn slightly, observing how it complements the lines of your gown, the lace catching the light with each subtle movement. Victorian fashion may be restrictive, but it is also undeniably beautiful, a fact you can hardly deny as you admire the silhouette in the glass. Satisfied, Madame Beauchamp nods and reaches for a length of ribbon, tying it beneath your chin in a soft bow. "There," she declares triumphantly. "Now you are ready for anything, yes." You thank her, slipping your gloves back on with practiced ease. She wraps the hat box in tissue paper, tucking it beneath her arm before handing it to the footman who waits by the door. He nods respectfully, stepping aside to allow you to pass. Outside, the rain has stopped, leaving the streets damp and glistening in the soft light of early afternoon. The carriage awaits, door open and steps unfolded, and you step up without hesitation. The hat box is placed on the seat beside you, tied with a neat bow, and the door clicks shut with a whisper of wood against metal. And as the carriage pulls away, you glance down at your reflection in the polished glass window, catching sight of the bonnet's brim. It is perfect, a testament to Madame Beauchamp's artistry, and you find yourself smiling ever so slightly at the thought. The carriage rocks gently as it rolls down the lane wheels, gliding over the cobblestones with surprising grace. Outside the city hums with life a tapestry of movement and sound, but you are cocooned in satin and lace, shielded by layers of ritual and propriety. Victorian life may be heavy with expectation, but it is also softened by these small luxuries. A bonnet tied just so, a parasol trimmed with lace, the gentle sway of a carriage that moves with the rhythm of another time. The carriage rocks gently as it makes its way back through the winding streets of London, the misty rain having left a fine sheen of moisture over every cobblestone and window pane. You settle back into the velvet seat, smoothing your skirts with practiced grace. The hat box rests beside you, its ribbon neatly tied, a reminder of the morning's excursion to Madame Beauchamp's. Outside, the world passes by in muted shades of gray and green, the city's relentless energy softened by the mist that clings to its buildings and carriages. You draw back the lace curtain and peer out, watching as shopkeepers sweep their stoops, their brooms sending little clouds of dust and rainwater into the air. Children dash through the puddles, their boots splashing with each joyful leap, while flower vendors rearrange bouquets beneath striped awnings, their fingers red from the chill. There is a strange kind of comfort in this routine, a rhythm to the day that feels timeless, as if the city itself breathes in tandem with its people. The carriage rounds a corner, and you catch sight of St. James's Park, its iron gates standing tall and regal against the fog. The trees are bare, their branches stretching upward like gnarled fingers against the sky. A thin layer of mist hovers above the ground, blurring the edges of reality, making the world look like something out of a dream. You can just make out the shapes of passers-by ladies in layered skirts, gentlemen with canes and top hats, children chasing after pigeons with squeals of delight. The park is a familiar sight, a place of quiet walks and whispered conversations, of stolen glances and deliberate strolls. Victorian society is built upon such rituals, afternoon promenades, where appearances are carefully maintained, where chance encounters are anything but accidental. You have walked these paths countless times, the skirts of your gowns brushing against the gravel, your gloved hand resting lightly on the arm of a chaperone or acquaintance. It is as much a performance as it is a pastime, a delicate dance of manners and modesty. Your carriage comes to a gentle stop at the park's edge, the footman appearing almost instantly to open the door. You accept his hand, stepping down carefully, mindful of the layers of silk and lace that cascade around you. The air is crisp and slightly damp, carrying with it the faint scent of wet leaves and coal smoke. You raise your parasol, a delicate thing of lace and ribbon, and begin your walk along the gravel path. St. James's Park is quiet today, save for the occasional chatter of birds and the distant clatter of carriage wheels on cobblestones. The path winds lazily through the trees, their branches stretching overhead to form a kind of canopy, skeletal in the winter chill. Your skirts whisper against the gravel, the crinoline shifting slightly with each step, the weight of your petticoats a familiar pressure against your hips. As you walk, you observe the world around you with the careful attention that Victorian society demands. A lady and her daughter stroll past, their gowns of matching blue silk swaying in unison. The child clutches a stuffed bear in one gloved hand, its fur matted and well-loved. You nod politely as they pass, exchanging the briefest of smiles, the kind that conveys acknowledgement without the burden of conversation. Further along the path, you catch sight of a gentleman seated on a wrought iron bench, his cane resting against his knee, a newspaper folded neatly in his lap. His hat is tipped slightly forward, obscuring his face, but you can just make out the edges of a well-trimmed mustache and the glimmer of a silver watch chain. He glances up as you pass, offering a nod of greeting, to which you respond with a slight tilt of your head. It is enough a gesture of propriety, a recognition of shared space. Historians still debate the role of public parks in Victorian society. Some argue that they served merely as a backdrop for social rituals, a place for ladies to display their finery and for gentlemen to engage in polite conversation. Others suggest that parks like St. James's were a rare escape from the rigid confines of drawing rooms and parlors, a breath of fresh air in an era that prized appearances above all else. Whatever the truth, there is a certain comfort in these afternoon strolls, a sense of freedom that is felt, even if it is only an illusion. You continue your walk, the path winding along the edge of the lake, where ducks paddle lazily through the water, their feathers slick and glimmering in the pale sunlight. Children throw crumbs from the shore, their laughter ringing out over the water's surface. You pause for a moment, watching as the birds gather in flurries of wings and splashes their beaks, snapping up bits of bread with astonishing efficiency. There is something serene about this place, a kind of stillness that seems untouched by time. You close your parasol and sit for a moment on a nearby bench, smoothing your skirts as you do. The bustle fans out around you, the petticoats settling with a soft rustle. You glance out over the lake, taking in the reflection of the city's spires, rippling gently across the water's surface. A soft breeze stirs the edges of your bonnet, and you adjust the ribbons beneath your chin. For a moment, you simply sit and watch the world unfolding at its own pace. Ladies walk by with baskets of flowers. A gardener tends to the hedges with careful precision, and the ducks continue their gentle glide across the lake. You let the sounds of the park wash over you, the murmur of conversation, the chirp of birds, the distant clip-clop of hooves against stone. Time slips by in soft whispers, unmeasured and unhurried. You find yourself lulled by the rhythm of it, all the way the park moves in tandem with the city beyond. St. James's is a sanctuary in its own right, a place where the rigid structures of Victorian society soften just slightly at the edges. The clock tower chimes in the distance, its sound rolling across the park like a low melodic hum. You rise from the bench, lifting your skirts gracefully and extending your parasol once more. The carriage waits just beyond the gate, the footman already standing at attention, and you make your way back, each step measured and deliberate. The ritual continues. The layers of lace and silk sway with your movements, the crinoline fanning out in perfect symmetry. Victorian life is a series of routines and rituals, a delicate performance played out in drawing rooms, carriages, and afternoon walks in St. James's Park. And as you step into the carriage and the door closes softly behind you, you feel that performance settle around you like a familiar cloak. The carriage rocks gently as it makes its way back through the winding streets, the rhythm of the wheels on cobblestones lulling you into a soft reverie. Outside London, is beginning to slip into the pale light of afternoon, its gas lamps flickering to life, one by one, casting long shadows along the damp pavement. The mist has lifted slightly, leaving behind a crispness in the air that promises colder weather to come. You watch from behind the lace-trimmed curtains as shopkeepers close up for the evening, rolling down heavy shutters and sweeping the last remnants of fallen leaves from their doorsteps. Your gloved hands rest neatly in your lap, smoothing the folds of your skirts as the carriage sways. The bonnet you purchased at Madame Beauchamp's sits in its box beside you, tied with satin ribbon and nestled in layers of tissue paper. It's a small luxury, but one that brings a sense of accomplishment, another piece of the ritual complete. The city passes by in a blur of brick facades and iron railings, gas lamps flickering in the growing dusk. It's a familiar sight, this slow, winding journey back toward home, the carriage creaking gently with each turn. You allow yourself a moment of reflection, thinking back on the day's ritual of preparation, the layers of silk and lace that had been fastened with practiced precision. It's an art form, really, the way each piece fits into the next a puzzle of fabric and fashion that molds the body into something both elegant and impenetrable. Historians still argue over whether Victorian women saw their attire as a form of imprisonment or a source of pride. Some claim the corsets and bustles were restrictive symbols of society's tight grip on femininity and decorum. Others argue that the intricate layers provided a sense of security, a kind of armor against the unpredictable nature of the outside world. Perhaps it is both protection and confinement, beauty and burden intertwined in layers of satin and lace. The carriage slows its wheels, crunching over gravel as it pulls into the drive. You glance out the window and catch sight of the familiar iron gates, their tops curled in elegant twists, gleaming with the faintest sheen of rain. The footman appears, opening the door with a practiced bow. His gloved hand extends toward you, and you accept it with the grace that has been drilled into you since childhood. Your skirts are lifted just slightly enough to clear the step, and you step down onto the gravel, feeling the familiar weight of petticoats settling around you. The hat box is handed over, and you nod in appreciation before making your way toward the front door, the familiar clack of your heeled boots muffled by the damp ground. The front doors swing open before you even reach the top step, a maid standing just inside her hands, folded neatly in front of her apron. She dips into a curtsy, her gaze respectfully lowered as you pass. Inside the house is warm and fragrant, scented with beeswax and rosewater, a fire already crackling in the drawing room to stave off the chill. You make your way up the grand staircase, one hand trailing along the polished banister, the other holding the hat box securely against your side. The stairs creak ever so slightly beneath your weight, their wood softened with age and wear. Gas lamps flicker along the walls, their flames casting long shadows that dance with your every step. At the top of the staircase, your maid is waiting, her expression placid and attentive. She accepts the hat box with both hands, nodding slightly as you instruct her to place it with your collection. "Very good, miss," she replies softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You watch as she moves down the hallway, her footsteps nearly silent on the carpeted floor, disappearing around the corner with the soft rustle of fabric. You step into your dressing room, the familiar scent of lavender greeting you, as you cross the threshold. The curtains are drawn, the soft glow of gaslight illuminating the vanity where brushes and bottles of perfume are arranged with military precision. Your gloves are slipped off and placed gently on the table, followed by the bonnet and the parasol, each item returned to its rightful place, as though performing a ritual of its own. The mirror reflects your image back at you, the dress still pristine despite the hours spent in carriages and parlors. You catch a glimpse of the bustle behind you, the perfect arc of fabric fanning out like the tail of some exotic bird. It's a strange sensation, seeing oneself so carefully constructed, each detail painstakingly designed for effect. You know that beneath the layers of silk and lace lies the corset, its boning pressing against your ribs, holding you upright, cinching your waist into the desired silhouette. It's not uncomfortable exactly, but its presence is always felt, an unyielding reminder of the expectations that lace you in just as tightly as the ribbons that bind your corset. A soft knock at the door disrupts your thoughts, and your maid enters, hands folded neatly. "Would you like me to prepare the evening dress, miss?" she asks, her voice gentle and familiar. You nod, stepping back from the mirror as she moves toward the wardrobe, pulling the heavy doors open to reveal a collection of gowns in every shade and fabric imaginable. For evening, something darker is preferred: deep blues, rich velvets, or perhaps the garnet silk with its scalloped lace trim. The decision is left to your maid, who selects with the sort of practiced ease that comes from years of familiarity. She lifts the gown from its place, draping it carefully over the armchair beside the vanity. The skirts are full, the bodice structured with rows of tiny buttons that glitter faintly in the gaslight. You catch sight of your reflection once more, the light glimmering off the pearls at your throat, the lace at your sleeves still crisp and uncreased. It's a transformation that will begin soon enough, the shedding of the day's attire and the donning of the evening's armor. For now, though, you allow yourself a moment of stillness, sinking onto the velvet-cushioned chair and folding your hands neatly in your lap. Outside, the sky has darkened, street lamps flickering to life one by one as shadows stretch long across the cobbled streets. The world is preparing for evening, just as you are slipping quietly into another layer of performance. Victorian life is nothing if not ritualistic, a cycle of dressing and undressing, of appearances maintained and expectations upheld. You exhale softly the corset, restricting even that simple motion, and close your eyes for just a moment, feeling the weight of silk and propriety settle around you like a familiar blanket. The fire crackles softly in the grate as your maid sets to work, her hands deft and sure as she unbuttons the back of your day dress. Each tiny button is released with a soft pop, the pressure of the bodice easing incrementally with every slip of fabric. You inhale a little deeper, grateful for the reprieve, though you know it won't last long. Evening attire is its own kind of armor, no less intricate or demanding than what you wore during the day. Your maid helps you step out of the dress, the heavy layers of silk and lace pooling at your feet with a whisper of fabric. She lifts it carefully, draping it over her arm before whisking it away to be brushed and aired, ensuring it's ready for another outing. In its place, she brings forth your evening chemise, soft white and edged with lace that flutters slightly as she slips it over your head. It's a familiar sensation, the coolness of the cotton against your skin, a stark contrast to the weight of the silk you just shed. But of course, the chemise is only the beginning. There is still the corset, your steadfast companion throughout the day. It stays rigid and unyielding. Your maid approaches with it, folded neatly over her arm, the laces trailing behind like ribbons. You turn, grasping the edge of the vanity for support as she fastens it around your torso. The pressure returns, cinching your waist back into the ideal silhouette, the boning pressing firmly against your ribs. Victorian society demands a certain shape, and the corset is the tool by which it is achieved. Not too tight this evening, I think you murmur, and she nods obediently, her hands moving with practiced ease. It's a delicate balance, enough compression to smooth the lines of your dress, but not so much that you feel faint during the evening's events. The stays are tightened, the laces pulled snug, and you feel your posture shift back into its familiar rigidity. There is a comfort in it, oddly enough, the way the corset holds you upright, shoulders squared, and back straight. It is impossible to slouch, impossible to forget the expectations placed upon you. Next come the petticoats, layers of cotton and silk that add volume and structure. They are heavier than the ones you wore during the day, trimmed with lace and sewn with small glass beads that catch the light with every movement. Your maid fluffs each layer as she drapes it over your head, tying it neatly at the waist before moving to the next. The fabric rustles softly, whispering against your skin as it settles into place. By the time the final layer is smoothed out, you feel cocooned in fabric, each step cushioned by layers of Victorian modesty. And then the gown itself. It's a marvel of craftsmanship, deep garnet silk that shimmers in the firelight, its bodice trimmed with lace and threaded with satin ribbons. The skirts are full and heavy, cascading down in gentle folds that sway with every slight movement. Your maid lifts it carefully, slipping it over your head and smoothing it down your torso. The buttons up the back are tiny and precise, each one fastened with the kind of delicate touch that can only be learned through years of practice. Historians still debate the purpose of such elaborate evening wear. Was it purely for status A's way to display wealth and craftsmanship to one's peers? Or was it simply another layer of societal control, a means to keep women bound both literally and figuratively to the ideals of propriety and modesty? Whatever the reason, there is no denying its beauty. The gown flows like water, rippling with every step, its fabric catching the light and reflecting it back in hues of crimson and burgundy. Your maid steps back, hands folded in front of her as she surveys her work. "Very fine, miss," she murmurs, nodding with approval. You turn slightly, watching the skirts flare out, with the movement the crinoline holding its shape perfectly. The bodice is fitted like a glove, the lace at your collar framing your face with a softness that contrasts the structured lines of your silhouette. Next comes the jewelry, an heirloom necklace of pearls and garnets that glimmers softly in the gaslight. Your maid fastens it around your neck, the clasp clicking gently as it locks into place. The coolness of the pearls against your skin is almost startling, a whisper of something ancient and precious resting just above your collarbone. Matching earrings follow delicate drops that sway slightly as you turn your head. A pair of satin gloves are slipped over your hands, their length extending past your elbows, covering every inch of exposed skin. Victorian society is nothing if not vigilant about modesty. The gloves are smoothed out, each finger adjusted, each wrinkle pressed flat. You watch your reflection as your maid works, marveling at the transformation. Gone is the woman who walked in St. James's Park that afternoon, her parasol twirling lightly in the misty rain. In her place stands a figure swathed in silk and lace corseted and poised, ready for whatever the evening may hold. Finally, the fan. It's a masterpiece of lace and mother of pearl, its surface hand-painted with tiny roses and ribbons. You grasp it lightly, feeling the delicate weight of it in your hand. The fan is not merely decorative, it is a tool of communication, a subtle whisper of flirtation or dismissal depending on how it is used. A flick of the wrist, a flutter against the cheek, even the way it is held can send messages that words cannot. Outside, you hear the distant rumble of carriage wheels, the soft clatter of hooves on cobblestones. The evening has begun, and with it the rituals of Victorian society, the quiet exchanges, the hushed conversations, the glances traded behind fans and over teacups. You rise from the vanity, smoothing your skirts as you do, and turn toward the door where your maid waits patiently. "Shall I call the carriage, miss?" she asks, her hands folded neatly in front of her apron. You nod, and she disappears down the hallway, her footsteps nearly silent on the polished wood. You take one last look in the mirror, watching the way the light catches on the silk, the lace, the soft glimmer of pearls at your throat. The transformation is complete, each layer secured, each button fastened. You are ready to step out into the evening, to play your part in the grand performance that is Victorian life. The grand hallway is quiet, save for the soft rustle of your skirts as you descend the staircase, one gloved hand trailing along the polished banister. The gas lamps flicker along the walls, their flames casting gentle shadows that dance with each step. The chandelier above glimmer with 100 tiny crystals, reflecting light in shards that scatter across the floor like droplets of water. It's a slow, deliberate descent, each movement carefully measured, the weight of your skirts balanced against the crinoline beneath. Victorian life, you've come to understand, is nothing if not choreographed. At the bottom of the staircase, your maid is waiting, her hands folded neatly in front of her apron. "The carriage is ready, miss," she murmurs, her voice low and deferential. You nod, smoothing the folds of your dress one last time before accepting the satin gloves she offers you. They slide over your hands with the familiarity of ritual, each finger snugly encased in white silk, each button fastened at the wrist. Your parasol is waiting by the door, its handle polished to a high sheen, its lace canopy trimmed with tiny bows. It's less for function and more for appearance. Tonight the gas lamps outside will keep the streets well lit, and the drizzle from earlier has long since faded. Still no lady is seen out in the evening without the proper accessories. Victorian propriety demands it. The front door swings open, revealing the carriage gleaming in the pale light of the street lamps. The horses are polished and groomed, their harnesses shining their breath, misting softly in the chill evening air. The footman bows slightly as you approach, extending a gloved hand to assist you up the step. You lift your skirts just enough to clear the doorway, the layers of silk and taffeta whispering against the wood as you settle onto the velvet cushioned seat. The door closes with a soft click, and the carriage lurches forward the familiar sway of its wheels, a comfort against the cool night. Outside, London is bathed in the soft glow of gas lamps, their flames flickering behind glass housings, casting long shadows on the cobblestones below. The streets are quieter now, the chaos of the day fading into the hush of evening. Only the occasional echo of footsteps or the distant rumble of carriage wheels disrupts the stillness. You draw back the lace curtain and peer out into the night. The buildings loom tall and dark, their windows aglow with flickers of light, candles, gas lamps, perhaps a fire or two. You catch glimpses of figures moving behind drawn curtains, shadows flitting past glass panes, like ghosts locked in their own rituals. The city is alive, but softened its sharp edges, blurred by the cloak of night. The carriage rounds a corner, and the familiar silhouette of Lady Montrose's townhouse comes into view, its facade grand and imposing, trimmed with ivy that crawls up the brick in lazy spirals. Light spills out from the windows, pooling onto the pavement below and casting warm glows across the iron railings. A footman is stationed at the door, his posture straight and unyielding eyes fixed forward as though carved from stone. Your carriage halts the horses, shifting slightly in their traces, steam puffing from their nostrils in the chill air. The door opens, and you step down with practiced grace, your hand light on the footman's as he assists you. The skirts of your gown settle around you, cascading in perfect folds, the bustle fanning out behind with a whisper of fabric. You nod in acknowledgement, and he steps back, the door swinging shut with a click. The path to the door is lined with gas lamps, their flames flickering softly in the night air. You ascend the steps, your parasol balanced gracefully over your arm, and the heavy brass knocker is lifted and dropped with a soft thud. Moments later, the door swings open, and you are greeted by the butler, who bows deeply as you step inside. The entry hall is a masterpiece of Victorian elegance. Marble floors, polished to a mirror-like sheen, grand mirrors lining the walls, their gilt frames catching the light in brilliant flashes. Chandeliers hang from the ceiling, their crystals refracting light into rainbows that dance across the walls. You hand your parasol and gloves to the waiting maid, who curtsies politely before disappearing into the shadows beyond the staircase. Lady Montrose herself greets you in the drawing room, her gown a rich emerald silk trimmed with pearls that catch the light with every movement. Her hair is swept back into an elaborate arrangement of curls and pins, a diamond comb glimmering just above her ear. "My dear, you look exquisite," she coos, her gloved hands reaching out to clasp yours. You smile politely, inclining your head. "As do you, Lady Montrose. That gown is simply divine." She beams at the compliment, patting your hand affectionately before gesturing to the room beyond. "Do come in, we've just begun. I wouldn't want you to miss the latest gossip." You follow her into the drawing room, where the warmth of the fire contrasts sharply with the chill that lingers just beyond the frosted window panes. The room is filled with ladies in gowns of every color, their skirts swaying gently as they move about the room, glasses of sherry held delicately in gloved hands. Gentlemen stand in clusters, their voices low and murmuring the occasional burst of laughter, punctuating the quiet hum of conversation. Lady Montrose leads you to a settee near the fire, its velvet cushions plush and inviting. You sink into it, gracefully smoothing your skirts As you do, and a maid appears almost instantly with a glass of sherry which you accept with a nod. The liquid is warm and smooth, burning slightly as it slips down your throat, and you find yourself relaxing into the cushions, the fire casting a soft glow across your lap. The conversation drifts in and out of your awareness, whispers of a new art exhibit at the gallery, rumors of a scandal involving Lord Haverford and the daughter of a baron. Victorian society is built on such whispers, a web of rumor and intrigue woven through every parlor and drawing room in London. You nod and smile where appropriate, adding the occasional murmur of agreement, though your thoughts are half elsewhere, tracing the flicker of firelight across the polished mantel and the shimmer of gaslight on crystal chandeliers. Outside, the city hums quietly, its streets aglow with the soft flicker of lamps and the distant rumble of carriages. Inside, the room is warm and bright, filled with laughter and conversation that rises and falls like the tide. Victorian life is a performance you realize, one of ritual and repetition of appearances carefully maintained and reputations quietly defended. You sip your sherry and glance around the room, taking in the glittering gowns, the smooth waves of silk and satin, the pearls and diamonds that catch the light with every movement. It is beautiful, certainly, but also heavy-weighted with the expectations of society, the rituals of dress and decorum that define each day from morning to night. And yet, there is a comfort in it, a predictability that wraps around you like the folds of your gown, holding you upright, cinching you in, and binding you to the rhythm of it all. The fire crackles softly in the drawing room as the evening unfolds in a series of practiced gestures. Conversations ebb and flow, voices rising in gentle waves, punctuated by the clink of glass against glass and the whisper of satin against polished wood. Lady Montrose flits between guests, her emerald skirts sweeping gracefully as she greets each arrival with a gloved hand and a perfect smile. You watch her from your seat near the fire, fingers wrapped lightly around the stem of your sherry glass, the warmth of the liquid spreading through you with each delicate sip. Victorian evenings are nothing if not orchestrated. There is an unspoken choreography to the way ladies move, from group to group, exchanging pleasantries with the kind of poise that is both effortless and deeply rehearsed. Men stand in clusters near the fireplace or the grand windows, discussing matters of business and politics with low voices and nods of approval. Occasionally, a laugh will break through the murmur, a burst of mirth, quickly stifled by a sip of brandy or a cough into a handkerchief. Lady Montrose sweeps back into view, her emerald gown shimmering in the gaslight as she approaches with a smile. "My dear, you must come and meet Lord Pembroke. He's just returned from Sussex, and I hear the renovations on his estate are simply marvelous." You rise gracefully, smoothing your skirts with a practiced hand. "I would be delighted." She leads you across the room, your heels clicking softly against the polished floor, the layers of your gown whispering with every step. The chandelier above glitters with 1,000 tiny crystals, casting delicate rainbows across the ceiling as you pass beneath its glow. Lord Pembroke is standing near the window, a glass of brandy in his hand, his posture relaxed and confident. He is tall, with sharp features, softened only by the silver threading through his hair, and he turns as you approach, his eyes lighting up with polite interest. "Lord Pembroke, May I present Miss Lady Montrose? Pauses, gesturing toward you with a graceful sweep of her hand. You dip into a curtsy, the skirts of your gown fanning out around you in perfect symmetry. He bows in return, his gaze steady and appraising. A pleasure, madam. His voice is smooth, with just the faintest hint of amusement coloring his tone. And how is Sussex, you inquire, straightening, as Lady Montrose drifts away to attend to another guest. I hear your estate is quite the marvel. He nods, swirling the amber liquid in his glass thoughtfully. Indeed, it has come together quite nicely. The gardens are nearly complete, though I suspect they'll need another season to truly flourish. The conversation flows easily after that, a series of observations and polite inquiries that build upon each other like the layers of a well-constructed gown. You speak of the weather, the state of London's streets, the latest exhibit at the gallery. He listens attentively, nodding at the right moments, his gaze never drifting from yours. It is a dance of words measured and polite, punctuated by soft laughter and the occasional sip of brandy. Outside, the rain has begun to fall again, pattering softly against the tall windows, streaking the glass with rivulets of water. The sound is almost soothing, a counterpoint to the low hum of conversation that fills the room. You glance toward the window, catching sight of your reflection, faintly mirrored in the glass, bonneted, gloved, and framed by the lace trim of your gown. The rain blurs the edges, softening the lines, turning your silhouette into something ethereal and distant. Lord Pembroke follows your gaze, his eyes settling on the rain-splattered window pane. There's something oddly comforting about the rain, he remarks, his voice low and thoughtful. It makes the world feel smaller somehow. You nod, turning back to him with a soft smile. Indeed, I find it rather soothing. He raises his glass slightly, a gesture of agreement. Perhaps that is why Londoners have grown so accustomed to it, a constant companion even on the bleakest days. You laugh softly, the sound mingling with the gentle crackle of the fire, or perhaps we simply have no choice but to accept it. His smile widens just a touch. Quite so. There is a pause, then a moment of stillness that settles between you like the hush before a storm. His gaze is steady, his expression thoughtful. Would you do me the honor of joining me in the conservatory? I find it far more agreeable than the crowded parlor. You hesitate for the briefest of moments, but propriety demands you accept. I would be delighted. He extends his arm, and you place your gloved hand lightly upon it, feeling the coolness of his sleeve through the thin barrier of satin. Together you make your way through the crowded drawing room, nodding politely to those you pass, your skirts brushing against the floor in soft whispers. The conservatory is a marvel of glass and wrought iron, its walls stretching upward to form a domed ceiling that lets in the muted light of the gas lamps outside. Ferns and palms line the walls, their leaves glossy and vibrant, casting long shadows against the mosaic-tiled floor. A fountain bubbles quietly at the center, its water catching the light as it trickles down sculpted stone. Lord Pembroke releases your arm and gestures toward one of the iron benches near the fountain. You settle onto the seat, smoothing your skirts as you do, the layers of petticoats and crinolines settling around you like the petals of a flower. He takes the seat beside you, his movements smooth and unhurried, his gaze never straying from yours. It is a fine evening, he remarks, his tone casual, yet laced with something deeper. The rain makes it all seem quieter. You nod, glancing up at the glass dome above. Droplets trail down the panes, crisscrossing in delicate patterns before disappearing into the iron frame. It is peaceful here, far from the hum of conversation and the weight of expectation that lingers in every corner of Lady Montrose's drawing room. For a moment, you allow yourself to relax your gloved hands folded neatly in your lap, your posture still perfect but softened by the stillness of the space. Outside, the rain continues its gentle dance against the glass, a lullaby of droplets that hums through the walls like a whispered secret. Lord Pembroke's voice breaks the silence, soft and measured. It is rare to find a moment of quiet in this city. I must thank you for sharing it with me. You turn to him, offering a small smile. The pleasure is mine, I assure you. And in that moment, with the rain tapping softly above the gas lamps, casting their gentle glow, and the fountain bubbling quietly between you, the evening feels suspended untouched by the noise and rush of the outside world. Victorian life is often a performance, each gesture rehearsed, each word carefully chosen. But here in the shadowed stillness of the conservatory, it almost feels real. The soft glow of the gas lamps filters through the glass panes of the conservatory, casting delicate patterns of light and shadow across the mosaic-tiled floor. Outside, the rain continues to patter against the glass dome, its rhythm steady and soothing, almost hypnotic. The fountain bubbles quietly nearby its water, trickling over smooth stone, the sound blending seamlessly with the rain in a symphony of gentle murmurs. You sit across from Lord Pembroke, your hands folded neatly in your lap, the layers of your gown fanned out around you in perfect symmetry. His gaze is steady, polite yet inquisitive, his hands resting casually on the wrought iron armrests. For a moment, neither of you speaks, content to let the rain and the fountain fill the silence with their quiet whispers. Victorian society is, after all, built upon the appreciation of quiet moments, small pockets of stillness amid the structured chaos of daily life. At length, Lord Pembroke clears his throat softly, his eyes never leaving yours. I must say I find it rather refreshing to meet someone who appreciates the quieter side of society. His voice is low, almost conspiratorial, as though confessing some hidden truth. You smile, tilting your head slightly. I find there is a kind of peace in it. London is so full of noise and bustle, it's nice to find moments of quiet. He nods, leaning back slightly in his chair. Indeed, most of my acquaintances seem to thrive on the commotion. Balls, gala, soiree, always another event, another spectacle. But here, he gestures around the conservatory, his hand sweeping through the air like an artist's brush. Here it is, almost as if time pauses. You nod in agreement, glancing up at the rain-streaked glass dome above. Droplets race down the panes, their paths crisscrossing in delicate patterns before disappearing into the iron framework. It is mesmerizing the way the water seems to move with its own quiet purpose, unhurried and unbothered by the world outside. Historians still debate the purpose of Victorian conservatories. Some argue that they were mere displays of wealth and ostentatious flourish for those who could afford to build glass palaces in their homes. Others suggest that they served as sanctuaries, private retreats from the rigid demands of society. In either case, they remain symbols of elegance and leisure, places where one could retreat from the noise of the world and watch the rain fall in uninterrupted peace. Lord Pembroke's voice draws you back from your thoughts. You know I had one of these built at my estate in Sussex. His eyes glimmer slightly with pride. Though perhaps not as grand as Lady Montrose's, I find it quite charming. There's something about watching the rain from behind glass that makes one appreciate it all the more. You smile, imagining the rolling gardens of Sussex stretching out in waves of green beneath the soft mist of English rain. It must be lovely, you reply, your voice soft and genuine. It is, he agrees, leaning forward slightly. Perhaps one day you might see it for yourself. The suggestion hangs in the air between you, delicate and unspoken. It is not a proposal, not in the formal sense, but it carries with it the weight of intention. You sip your tea, allowing the warmth of the liquid to settle the flutter in your chest before responding. I should like that very much. Lord Pembroke's smile is subtle but sincere. Then it is settled. I shall make arrangements for a visit once the season turns. The gardens are at their best in the spring. You nod, feeling the blush rise just slightly to your cheeks. Outside, the rain patters on, indifferent to the gentle turn of conversation within the glass-domed sanctuary. Victorian courtship is a series of delicate gestures and unspoken promises, each word weighed and measured for its implication. An invitation to visit one's estate is not simply an act of hospitality. It is a declaration of interest, a step along the winding path of propriety that leads to parlor whispers and raised eyebrows. You allow the silence to stretch a moment longer, savoring the quiet companionship shared between you. There is no need for hurried words or forced conversation. Here in the conservatory, the world feels suspended, untouched by the frantic pacing of society. You listen to the water trickling over stone, the rain tapping gently on the glass, and you feel a calmness settle over you like a shawl. At last, Lord Pembroke rises, offering his hand. Shall we rejoin the others? I fear Lady Montrose might send a search party if we linger too long. You laugh softly, placing your gloved hand in his. We mustn't upset the order of things, you reply, with a smile. He guides you back through the conservatory, your skirts whispering against the mosaic tiles, the lace trim of your dress catching the light with each step. The rain continues to tap softly against the glass above a lullaby that follows you back into the warmth and noise of the drawing room. The transition is almost jarring, the shift from quiet solitude to the gentle chaos of Victorian society, but you settle into it with practiced ease. Lady Montrose is there to greet you, her eyes alight with curiosity. There you are. I was beginning to think you'd been stolen away. You laugh politely, exchanging the expected pleasantries, as Lord Pembroke takes his leave to join the other gentlemen near the fire. The evening continues much as it began, conversations fluttering around you like butterflies' glasses clinking softly, and the occasional burst of laughter that ripples through the room. You nod and smile, participate where necessary, but your thoughts remain tethered to the conservatory, to the soft rain against the glass, and the promise of Sussex in the spring. Outside, the rain begins to fade, the clouds thinning as the moon breaks through, casting silvery light across the cobblestones. The city sighs in relief, its streets glimmering in the moonlight, its rooftops shedding droplets like tears. Inside, the warmth of the drawing room cocoons you in lace and silk, the fire crackling softly in the grate, and you feel, if only for a moment, that you are exactly where you belong. The evening is far from over, but the promise of its conclusion lingers on the edges of your thoughts, softened by the knowledge that Victorian life is a series of rituals, some grand, some whispered in the quiet moments of rain and glass. And you dressed in layers of silk and propriety are perfectly suited for it. The clock on the mantel ticks with slow, deliberate rhythm, its hands inching closer to the hour as the evening draws to a close. Lady Montrose's drawing room is still alive with soft conversation and the gentle clinking of crystal against silver trays, but the energy has begun to settle like embers fading in a fire. You sit near the window, your hands folded neatly in your lap, the lace trim of your gown spilling over the edge of the chair in ripples of satin and silk. Your thoughts drift back to the conservatory, to the rain tapping gently against the glass, and Lord Pembroke's quiet smile as he spoke of Sussex. There is something almost surreal about it now, as though it existed outside of time, an unguarded moment in a world that is otherwise stitched together by ritual and propriety. Victorian society leaves little room for spontaneity, and yet in that glass-domed sanctuary, it had felt as though the world had paused just long enough for something real to slip through. Would you care for a last cup of tea before you depart? Lady Montrose's voice is warm, and practiced her smile as polished as the silver tray she gestures toward. You nod politely, offering your cup to the maid, who appears almost instantly to refill it. The tea is warm, and fragrant curling steam rising in delicate tendrils that dissipate into the chandelier-lit air. Did you enjoy your conversation with Lord Pembroke? Lady Montrose asks, her eyes alight with the kind of curiosity that is both genuine and strategic. You allow a small smile to grace your lips. He was very pleasant. I found his company most agreeable. Her gaze sparkles with satisfaction. Oh, I'm certain you did. He is quite the gentleman, and his estate simply marvelous. I've had the pleasure of attending a summer fete there once. The gardens are truly splendid. You sip your tea, nodding thoughtfully. He did mention the gardens. I must confess I am quite curious to see them. Lady Montrose's smile widens, and she leans in just slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. Well, if you should find yourself in Sussex this spring, I dare say you shall not be disappointed. Her implication lingers between you, soft and unspoken. In Victorian society, the notion of visiting another's estate, particularly one as grand as Lord Pembroke's, is more than mere pleasantry. It is a suggestion of familiarity, of trust, and perhaps even of intention. But you know better than to speak of such things openly. Instead, you nod graciously, allowing the conversation to drift back to more socially acceptable topics. Fashion the latest plays, the upcoming charity ball. The clock chimes softly, its notes delicate and measured, signaling the end of the evening's social hour. Around the room, ladies rise from their chairs, smoothing skirts and gathering gloves, fans, and bonnets. Gentlemen drain their glasses, offering parting handshakes and nods of farewell. The ritual is seamless, a well-rehearsed conclusion to an evening of Victorian civility. Lady Montrose escorts you to the door herself, her gloved hand resting lightly on your arm as she walks you to the grand foyer. I do hope you will join us again soon, my dear. Your presence is always such a delight. You smile graciously, dipping your head in acknowledgement. The The pleasure is entirely mine, Lady Montrose. I thank you for a most lovely evening. Outside, the rain has stopped entirely, leaving the cobblestones glistening with a thin sheen of moisture that reflects the light of the gas lamps in delicate arcs. Your carriage awaits the footman standing at attention beside the open door, his posture stiff and practiced. Lady Montrose bids you farewell with a final squeeze of your hand before retreating back inside the door, closing with a soft click behind her. The footman helps you into the carriage, your skirts gathering around you like waves of silk and lace. The interior is warm and plush, the velvet cushions enveloping you as you settle back, the door shutting softly behind you. The carriage lurches forward, its wheels crunching over the wet stones, and you watch through the window as the grand townhouses of Mayfair blur past their facades, gleaming with the soft glow of lamplight. Historians still debate the importance of social calls in Victorian life. Some argue that they were mere formalities, opportunities to display wealth and station under the guise of polite conversation. Others suggest they were the very fabric of society, a network of connections woven through parlors and drawing rooms, solidifying alliances and nurturing quiet rivalries. Regardless of their true purpose, they remain the cornerstone of Victorian ritual, a dance of manners and propriety that repeats itself evening after evening, year after year. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the gentle sway of the carriage as it rolls onward, the muffled clatter of hooves against cobblestone fading into the background. Outside, the city begins its slow descent into slumber, gas lamps flickering like stars along the misty streets, casting long shadows that stretch out like fingers across the pavement. The rain has left the world, softened its edges, blurred and shimmering in the low light, and you find yourself lulled by the quiet rhythm of the journey home. The carriage draws to a halt, the familiar iron gates of your own estate looming just beyond the window pane. The footman opens the door, offering his hand as you step down your heels, clicking softly against the stone path. The house is warmly lit, its windows glowing like lanterns in the fog-draped night. The maid greets you at the door, her hands folded neatly, and she helps you remove your bonnet and gloves with the sort of practiced grace that Victorian life demands. The evening ritual continues. Your maid unfastens the tiny buttons at the back of your dress layer by layer until the silk and lace slip from your shoulders and pool at your feet. The corset is unlaced next, its ribbons released with a sigh, and you inhale deeply for the first time since the evening began. Petticoats are folded, the crinoline hung carefully in the wardrobe, and at last you step into the comfort of your nightgown, soft and unstructured, the closest thing to freedom that Victorian fashion allows. You sink into the armchair by the window, watching as the fog rolls lazily across the gardens, the moonlight casting long shadows that sway with the breeze. For a moment, you simply breathe, feeling the weight of the evening slip from your shoulders, replaced by the gentle stillness of night. The city is quiet now, its chaos muffled by the damp of the rain and the hush of sleep. You close your eyes, letting the quiet fill the room, wrapping around you like the folds of your gown. Victorian life is nothing if not ritualistic each day, an echo of the last each evening, unfolding like a well-read book. But tonight you find comfort in the rhythm of it all, the predictability that comes with tradition, and the knowledge that tomorrow will begin anew, layer by layer, stitch by stitch. The fire burns low in the grate, its flames flickering softly against the walls, casting long shadows that sway with the dim light. Outside, the fog settles gently over the garden, blanketing the roses and ivy in a whisper of mist. The house is silent now, its rooms darkened, and still the echoes of conversation, long since faded into the quiet hush of midnight. You rest in the armchair by the window, a shawl draped across your shoulders, your fingers tracing the lace trim absent-mindedly. The rain has left the world, softened its edges blurred beneath the fog, and the moon hangs low and heavy in the sky, casting silver light across the cobblestones below. Victorian life, with all its rituals and routines, drifts quietly into the background. The corsets and crinolines, the lace and silk, the careful arrangement of petticoats, all set aside for now replaced by the simple comfort of stillness. You close your eyes, letting the warmth of the fire and the softness of the night settle around you. The city sleeps, its streets hushed and serene, its lamps flickering softly in the mist. And you, wrapped in the quiet elegance of your own sanctuary, feel the weight of the evening fade away, replaced by the gentle rhythm of breath and the slow descent into slumber. Rest well, dear listener. Sweet dreams.